Commissioners Court. It's 5 minutes after 1 p.m. Today is August the 6th, and we're in the central jury room of the Ralph H. Walton Jr. Justice Center at 1200 West Pearl Street in Granbury, Texas. And I call this meeting to order. And Miss Diane, you're going to give us a prayer? Thank you.
Let's pray. Father, we love you and we thank you, Lord. Father, we ask that you be with our community. We ask that you be with our community leaders, Father. We ask that you help them to govern with integrity, Father, and with wisdom. Father, we ask that you be with this meeting, that you lead and guide in every way, Lord. And Father, supernaturally, Father, we ask that you will just give them the answers and help them to lead in the way that you would have them to go. Father, I ask that everything that's been done today, Lord, be done to glorify you and you alone. Father, we love you and we lift up these prayers to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I pledge for the great state of Texas.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
So Judge Massengill is gone today, so you're stuck with me. And we have two agenda items. The first one to be discuss and receive public comment on the Master Thoroughfare Plan and jail expansion in preparation for potential road and jail bond election. You're up.
Thank you, Commissioner Eagle.
I'm sorry. I forgot a little protocol. I'll hand it over to her first.
Thank you, Commissioner Eagle. Just for anyone who hasn't been following this, or if you're new to this, or if you're watching online for the first time, I wanted to take a step back and show you where you can find information. So if you'll scroll, this is our homepage of our website. It should be scroll to the, it should be right there on that carousel. Can you scroll to the left or the right? There it is. Okay, right on the home page, there's a 2025 bond program. If you click on that, then there are two things. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on the Master Thoroughfare Plan, but not as much on county jail. So let's go there first and go to the documents. If you may or may not know that several months ago, the court authorized a third-party CPA firm to do an analysis on what's the as-is or to-be. As-is, keep the current jail, continue paying out-of-county housing, or add on the extension, and what that build would be. There were several assumptions that were made. If you want to, yes. Yeah, not that though. Can you go to the first link? There you go. This is the financial analysis. Ide Bailey is the CPA firm, and goes through the background and the assumptions, and if you'll scroll down to the analysis, goes through the methodology, the assumptions, and then the results here. So lots of information out there. Feel free to call or email any of us, I think. Can I say that? Are y'all okay with that? Yeah. With questions. This information's out there, and there's also, if you'll go back now to the, go back to the Master Thoroughfare Plan. Stephanie, did you want to say anything about the analysis on the jail? Okay. And let's stop here. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Let's stop there at that. Go back to the jail. I'm sorry. Yeah. If you look at this, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah.
Cost comparison?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of the long and the short of this thing. These two on the graph here. Over the next 20 years, projecting out the number of inmates that we're keeping out of county, the rising costs and everything involved with that. And then on the second column here is our expenditures including the light blue portion, which is the 24 million to build the jail there, you'll see that there's about a $50 million in savings over the next 20 years for us to do this jail expansion and move forward with keeping our inmates in town. It's going to save significant money in the long run to go ahead and do that. Now, I've been a proponent of, keeping them out of the county, but that cost has flipped. That's the big change that's happened here. Instead of us actually being able to keep them in Erath County cheaper than we could keep them here ourselves, that cost has gone up significantly, and we're paying $100, $105 a day per inmate, keeping them in other places out of county. So in the long run, after all the analysis, and this is a very detailed analysis. It'll get you as granular as you want to go on this. But just kind of the highlights there are, it's a significant savings over 20 years to go ahead and move forward with building that jail.
To say that one of the things that's out of the county's control is what other counties charge for out-of-county housing. So that's up to them and their budget, and we really don't have a choice on that because we have to have a place to house prisoners when our jail is full. So this is really, Ide Bailey spent a lot of time with Sheriff Deeds and with Commissioner Andrews and myself and our auditor and others in the county, and they have done a really good job in getting this analysis out there. So we'll go on now to the master, unless anyone else has anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in, please. So I feel like this commissioner feels like we've pared this down to the essence on this jail expansion. So I just wanted to point out, in the vein of transparency, if this bond were to fail, we do have a fallback position. I know the sheriff doesn't like this idea, but under the local government code 351.0035, it's entitled Temporary Housing. It says, on the request of the sheriff and the commissioner's court of a county, the Commission on Jail Standards shall authorize a county to house a prisoner in a tent or other facility that is not a county jail. So we can fall back on a tent if we have to. So just putting that in the record here. We do have two speakers on the, oh, you go ahead. I'm sorry. You're going back to the road now. I'm through.
Okay. So what order do you want to go in, Stephanie? Do we want to have the bond counsel first or the presentation? Okay.
Do we want our speakers first?
That's fine with me.
Okay. So we do have two speakers signed up for this agenda item. Number one, Tina Brown.
Okay, there's actually two items on this number one, the jail and the thoroughfare plan. So I'd really like to hear what you have to say before I.
Our rules indicate you come up, if you got something to say, go ahead and say it. So you're
Well, I don't
free to
have
go.
anything to say at this point because I don't know what you're going to say. So thank you.
So you're conceding your time. The second speaker will be Cindy Highsmith.
Thank you for allowing me to come up here and speak today. My name is Cindy Highsmith, and I live in Pecan Plantation. And I wanted to say, first of all, I completely support the jail bond. I hope that the commissioners and Ide Bailey will definitely further sell this bond initiative. I want you to talk about all the problems that are in the jail right now. I want you to talk about the sheetrock problems, the plumbing problems that you're having right now, what would happen if the sewer system went down and you had to fix that. You'd have to take all of the prisoners and they'd all have to go out of Hood County while you fix that sewer system. That's very expensive. Want you to talk about, you know, the sweating wall. When I moved here 4 years ago, first time I came to Commissioner's Court, y'all were talking about that wall and water on that wall and inside, and you were talking, at that time there was some discussion of cinder block movement and wall movement, and over the time that I've lived here now, there's been electrical problems. So it all adds up to, if we don't do this, this is going to cost us so much more. And this $24 million looks like a bargain. It's hard to say that $24 million looks like a bargain, but it does. So in saying that, I definitely want you to address too, because what's on people's mind in the county, or I hear this in Pecan, is everybody is so happy that y'all lowered our tax rate, and we like that. It even lowered, I'm an old person, and it even lowered my tax rate, and I like that. So when you're talking about the jail, I hope you're not going to lump it together with the MTP. I hope you're just going to do them separately, and if we pass this jail bond, well, what is that going to do to our taxes? I hope you'll tell people, because they're interested. So I've said enough about that. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about this MTP. So 2 weeks ago in the paper, the headline is County Reviews $717 million Transportation Bond Proposal. Okay, that's a lot of money. Then last week, last Saturday, it says county's proposed rose bond grows to $444 million with 4 new projects. Now, I'm not going to use the words my husband did when I asked him if he was going to vote for this. Let's just say that he said no. And I said, well, what would you vote for, John? You know, not that everybody thinks like John, but he said, you know, when our commissioner came to Pecan, into our clubhouse, and she presented 5 projects, and she was well received. Now we're up to what, 14 or something? And this is a big number. This is getting on close to $1 billion. And I'm going to tell you, $1 billion might fly over there in Harris County and Houston. $1 billion, getting close to $1 billion doesn't fly very well in Hood County. So I'm hoping that you will keep all of this in mind and think about paring this down, but please don't sabotage this jail bond by tying it up with the MTP. Thank you.
And to that point, the total construction build out on these projects are the numbers you're looking at there. What we're looking at on the bond is significantly lower than that. We've got some things that we've prioritized out of that, and that's what this is about. That's one of the things that we're looking for in this meeting, is let's find out where we need to be on that. So that, yeah, it's significantly less than those numbers that you're getting out of there. So
Yeah, and I'll add that number that the paper has, unfortunately, the way they put it in there, is kind of misleading, because that's the leveraged number. You know, the number for the county that the county's going to be asking for is, or asking to put on the county's not, the bond issue will be much less than that. At the high end, it would be $170 million, and something below that's probably where we're going to end up. To try to keep, in an effort to keep the I and S part of our tax rate pretty much level. So that number is kind of misleading. We're not going to be coming out there with a $740 million bond request by any means. All right, back to you, Commissioner.
Mr. Polster?
John Polster, ITS, working with the county on the road bond program. And let me just start by saying right off the bat that subsequent to our last meeting, we're going to be recommending today that the bond amount for the roads be not even towards the high end. There were 4 scenarios that your financial advisor provided estimates on, and we're coming in today recommending that the total bond program for the road side be the $125 million mark, not the 170. So we've come in and we heard the comments from folks. We're going to go through a presentation here in a second, and we kind of retrenched back to those first initial projects that everybody said were the critical projects for mobility. And so we've gotten from 15 to 16, which was what we did, is we asked people what their hopes, desires, and dreams were. We put it all on a list, showed you what the total universe was, and then we pared them back down to financial viability. So it was we went through an iteration because we wanted to see what the universe was, but now we're coming back and showing you what we think we're recommending that the county consider. Do I? Okay. So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. You've seen it, but I want to get to the spreadsheet, and then if we want to go over individual projects, we can. But we worked with all of our partners on the coordination of this project planning and to come up with the list of projects. So those are our partners we've been working with. And the reason we're here is everybody knows that the Hood County is growing, but it also, the roads are in a condition where they need to be upgraded. We're hitting more growth. The services, the level of service on the roads are deteriorating because of the congestion. We want to help with the safety issues and then moving people around the county. I showed y'all this last time. Y'all's population trend is increasing. You've had a growth rate since 2010 of about 37.5% growth over that period of time, and your projection is to continue that growth rate in the future. And I'm just going to point out that after COVID, when a lot of things, people started, I call it the diaspora. Everybody started leaving the urban areas and they started fleeing to the perimeter counties. Hood County's population growth increased by almost 10% during that time frame. And to put that in perspective, the country grew at barely 1%. So we're almost 10 times faster growing in Hood County than the country is as a whole. And people are leaving the core and moving to higher quality of life areas. So why we have some state roads on our list. The reason we're including state roads to assist the state with these projects is because the state roads carry a majority of the traffic in Hood County. And when you partner with the state and the MPO, you get a better chance of getting your projects funded because the gas tax hasn't been raised in 32 years. So the funding is tight and they tend to move towards projects that have partnerships. And so this bond program will allow the county to start partnering with their transportation partners. Next. So you're all part of the Fort Worth district. There's 25 districts. All of the districts right now, we're in a scenario where they're having some constraints on their consulting budgets, and which is why I'm recommending that the county step up and do the advanced planning on a lot of these projects, because once you start to do the advanced planning, you take control of your own destiny on the timeline. Because the state will tell you, like when we get to the list of projects, there's a couple of projects the state know they want to do, but with their budget cuts in consultant budgets, they're not going to have the capacity to do that, but they want the projects to be cleared. So if we step up and help them with that, it moves our projects up further in the timeline. Go back. And so the point we were talking about on the leveraging, we're going to be telling you a dollar amount, which is 125 million, but if we partner with the MPO and TxDOT on these projects, they have percentages where we're in for 20, they're in for 80. And so when you take the total cost of the projects that we're going to be chasing, that's where you get those larger numbers. But the bond issue itself will be, if the court adopts it, approves it, we'll be going asking the voters for 125 million on the roadside. And the reason we're getting into the game is because COG and TxDOT look to partners when they select projects. They go where partnership money comes. We've worked with the cities on the projects list that we've come up with, and we think we've got a very tight initial list of projects that will improve the quality of life of the residents of Hood County. Okay. So this is a point that I keep trying to make clear, and I'll just continue to try. When we're talking about a $125 million bond program, the nature of roads aren't like a building. We will only be issuing a limited amount of that dollars up front to start the advanced planning on these projects. So between the dollar amounts that we're going to recommend you initially issue and the growth rate that you're having, we're going to propose to do it in a manner that has minimal impact on your INS side of your tax rate. So where we started with the county thoroughfare plan. We've got to get some more detail out on the MTP email website, because a lot of people wanting to know how we got to that. And, you know, Ryan and Tignall did a lot of work with the court over the last year or so to develop this thoroughfare plan, and all the projects we're recommending come off of that thoroughfare plan. So I just said most of that. Y'all did all the work. I'm still going to go over it though. I'm like one of those people who says, do you have anything you want to say? And they go, no, and then they start talking. That's what I'm going to do. So y'all had a lot of the stakeholder meetings that was referenced a moment ago, where you went out and asked folks what they needed and what they saw as priorities in their areas. That led to the development of your thoroughfare plan in March. Subsequent to that, you all started looking at the projects that were the highest priority on that thoroughfare plan. And so we've had workshops, stakeholder outreach, and since we last met, we've met with the North Central Texas Council of Government regarding the partnership opportunities, which also led to us wanting to tweak some of the list of projects that we previously had. And we will be meeting on Friday, I believe, with TxDOT to talk to them about our projects as well. But we're pretty familiar with how TxDOT operates, so we're pretty certain we know what they're going to say. And then, if all goes well and the court decides, y'all are looking at potentially calling the bond election August 12th. So, new spreadsheet, and we'll hopefully have it already up on the website. If not, we'll have it by the end of the day. You've got on-system and off-system projects, and that means on-system are state roads that we're partnering with the state on, and off-system are not state roads, but we'll be partnering with our Metropolitan Planning Organization for these projects. So the number that the newspaper was hitting is the estimated project cost of that $689 million. But if you'll see the column that's gray, that's the column where the county is saying that that's a level of participation that they think they need in order to get these projects to move up in the priority. And so that is a total of $125 million, a total request if the court so chooses to ask the voters to do that. And next page, we'll back and forth. So these are the projects that were included originally in our total picture of what everybody asked us to do. And these we're going to call tier 2 projects, and that is that if we do whatever we do on the bond program for the projects that are actually listed, in my experience, the bond programs are typically able to do more than what they originally showed the voters they could do because of partnership issues. And if there is any flexibility left in the bond program, we would come back to the court and/or the public and say, we would pick from one of these projects to pull up into the bond program going forward, but they wouldn't be initially included in all of our brochures and material putting out. So this is what we heard from the public, but go back to the previous. But these are the projects, and I'm going to go through them individually. So we're down to basically 9 projects that we're going to be proposing, and then some program management funding as well. So I'm going to go into the 9, and then after that, I don't think we need to go over the tier 2 projects again, and then we'll just go from there. I want to do the project maps, so it'll be after the tier 2, I think, right? Keep going. Oh, and so by the way, the QR code that you see, if you, well, it's on every page, so you don't have to. I was redundantly redundant. That QR code, if you take your deal with your phone, my wife tells me this, I'm not sure, but if you take that QR code and you put it on your phone, it'll take you straight to the county's website, to that button that you can go in and look at all of the material that's up on the county's website. So one of the things that this project right here has very serious numbers of intersection improvements that TxDOT wants to do. We've been told they are interested in these moving forward, but their consultant budget doesn't allow them the ability to move out on these in the time manner that we want to do. So what we're proposing to do as part of the bond program is to put, just shy of $3 million towards these and hire a firm to do the environmental clearance, to do the schematic, and then to design those intersection improvements. So we basically give the state a ready packet for them to be able to go and do safety improvements. And what we would do, come alongside them on, is there are always safety improvement programs that either the state's putting out or the MPO's putting out, and we would be tailoring these projects to be able to compete competitively with those procurement requests. So engineering on these, this is something the state has told us they're interested in, and we're going to try to leap ahead of it by doing the engineering up front. Okay. So this is the Loop 567 extension, and the intent is to get traffic down around to 144 without having to go through town. Again, we're doing the original engineering on it. It's a new location, so the environmental clearance will take a little bit of time, and you want it to, because you want to make sure you're minimizing any impact to the adjacent properties. You want to make sure you're taking care of the environment. And I want to make it clear that this is a rendering of a connection. So it may, don't nobody go out and buy land based on that dotted line, because the environmental document determines that, and it can move, completely away from that dotted line. But that's generally the intent, is to connect Loop 567 on the north to 144 in the south, generally in that area. Next, yeah. And then this is the Falls Creek FM 167 relief route. And so what we're proposing to do is essentially, we got to do this in phases, and we've had success in this in other counties where we have moved a state road away from its current alignment and move it to a new location, and then the state picks that road up as a state road, and then we take the other road and turn it into a local street to do what it needs to do for the locals along that corridor. So it's multiple phases. We initially are proposing to do just the environmental clearance because of its new location, because of its proximity to Lake Granbury. It'll take us a while to get through that, but concurrent with doing the environmental clearance on it to set the alignment, we will also be coordinating with TxDOT to make sure that the road that we're proposing does what they need it to do as a state facility. So it will be doing two things at the same time, but it'll take a little longer than a normal, like those intersection improvements, because the road already exists. So the intent is to establish that corridor and then flip the designation to a state road. Okay, so this was one that came in later, but we thought was important. It's the SH 171 at the railroad track, where it crosses the railroad track at a skew, and there's been accidents there. And so what we're going to do is just basically 90-degree the crossing so that you come and you pull up and you can see trains left or right at both directions. We're partnering with, there's a lot of railroad safety improvement programs out there right now, and so we're proposing just to do the engineering on it and then getting it ready and then submitting it for those competition programs. Okay, so now we're moving down to what I call the off-system projects. These are projects that are eligible for federal funding with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, but they're off-system, which means they're not state roads. And so Stroud Creek connectivity, this is this area where we're talking about dealing with low water issues, trying to make it where this area, even when it floods, will still be able to get around by bringing these roads up out of the floodplain and or making new connections in order to, resolve that area flooding issues. And we have precedent on these types of projects in other counties as well, where the MPO sees that there are communities that are stranded due to flooding for long periods of time. They come alongside of us and we partner with them, and then we pull those roads up because they consider it a safety issue. School buses, emergency vehicles, et cetera, not being able to get around during a flood period, and that's why they're interested in partnering. Okay, the Mitchell Bend Highway Extension. Again, this is an issue where you've got connectivity issues we're trying to address because of you've got the beauty and the grandeur of Brazos River and your lake, but you also got the impediments that those bring with it. And so this is an intent to make a connection so that the people in this area can get around. That all the way around the river.
And that's off system too, right?
Yes, sir. All these after this are off system. Okay, next one. And Misty Meadows Extension, it's pretty much speaks for itself. We're trying to make a connection there so that basically adds kind of a loop, and there's a lot of schools along that road that will be, the school buses will benefit from that connection to get to the neighborhoods that those schools serve. And then the Pecan Plantation South Access, this is one that we were pretty confident we're going to be able to get the MPO's interest in because of the issues related to evacuation, issues related to Glen Rose. And this is a way to get people out of that community without having to go towards the problem. And we've got a similar situation in Rockwall County where we're doing the exact same thing, crossing, only it's not a river. I think I made a joke about railroad the last time. I apologize, y'all. It's a railroad, but it's similar. Okay, and then the Big Kahuna, Old Granbury Road. What we're proposing to do is we've got, not only do we have the engineering on this because it needs to be cleared, and we're proposing to clear the entire limits in one fell swoop, but then we're going to come back and work with the county and the cities in those areas to pick those areas that are most critical and build this in sections because it's a very expensive road, and we want to hit those areas first that are most critical. And so there is construction dollars associated with this project as well. And we will be looking to our partners, the MPO, City of Granbury, City of Crescent, on making the determination on which of these go and in what order.
I got a Can I throw this in?
Absolutely.
Just just a note here that even off the soft system, we're talking our end of it about a third of it, right?
Yeah, I can explain that if you want.
Yeah, okay, and because, in other words, because what we're talking about here is leverage.
Right.
So, yeah, if you could just kind of,
So, and always on when we go back, eventually we'll go back to the main spreadsheet, you'll see that there's notes in the notes, but on the ones that are off system, we're including 10% for design. Okay, I'll wait. I don't even know I can read it. Keep going, one more. So you'll see on the off-system projects, we are including 10% for the design services, and that's a rough plus or minus. Then we're also assuming that if it goes to construction, the county will have to have some participation in the construction and engineering services. So the CEI is like 3%. But we're also including a 20% local match, because all the project funding that we're going to be going after by clearing these the way we are requires a minimum of a 20% local match. And so what I did was I took the total cost of the project and then we multiplied it by 33%, and then we rounded the numbers to zeros. So that's the logic that we're using on these. If you look on the top on-system projects, right now all we're proposing to do is the environmental clearance, and then in two cases, PS&E, which there's a glossary at the back of the presentation now. That's all the words that we use that don't make sense. PS&E is the design document. So in two of those four cases, we're talking about taking the project all the way through construction documents. And in the two in the middle, we're only talking about environmentally clearing them. And the logic behind that is because they're larger projects, so we want to, do it one phases. But in the relief route, 167 relief route, that's a longer time frame because of the fact that we're trying to flip it to a state facility and swap roads. And so it takes 4 or 5 years to get to where you've got the road designed, cleared, and the state agrees to taking it on system and then moving their road off system. So we propose only to do the environmental assessment initially, and then in the future, as we get the project cleared, come back and see what we got to do to leverage. So each one of these has a logic on where the number comes from. And in the old Granbury scenario, we are to be even eligible for they're called Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG funds. You have to have a 20% match on construction. On top of, they'll partner with you on the engineering and all that, but you have to wait until you get an agreement. And sometimes on a project that large, it's hard to get an agreement with them because they have to commit up front. And so what I found in my doings over the 30 years is we go ahead and get the project cleared, we go get it and get it into the system, and then once we get it to where it's ready to go to construction, then we cut a deal with the MPO on the construction side. And then we count the fact that we would be 33% contributors and not 20, which makes our project look more competitive to other entities that are submitting just the 20% match. I hope I didn't lose you on that. It made sense in my head. So the rest of the stuff is tier 2 projects, and then we trickle down and then I go for questions. So I don't know the quorum. So one of the things I'm hoping to do is, I know we're trying to answer the questions, and I'm going to bring in Ryan on these questions we get on the website, because a lot of them have to do with the Thurber plant itself, and he did all the heavy lifting on it. So we're going to start getting all that information out once it starts working. Certain projects, we got a list, but we're not going to go over them because they're in the packet. We talked about them before. Tier 1 project, we're recommending and support sites to move on this. If you have any questions, we're saying 125, and if we want to, saw on your webpage, you've got the hilltop information. I think it'd be good to pull that up. And that one sheet shows the 4 scenarios. I'm going to show you what that. And I want to make a couple of comments related to that. So I've said this before, and I don't know if I'm very clear, but in every. My apologies. Do I have to start over? Yep. You guys can watch the video. I need the hilltop one.
It's this up. I was also going to point out that there's a link on our website for questions that you can, this right here, Master Thoroughfare Plan, feedback@hoodcounty.texas.gov. You can send questions, comments in there, and they will get to
And we're all responding to those. The ones that I'm having a slow time responding to are the ones that actually, the financial, the one below it. Yeah, no, the financial one. Yeah, from Hilltop. A lot of the questions have to do with the thoroughfare plan and some of the assumptions made. So when we get to those questions, we're going to have Ryan answer the email so that it's the accurate information. There you go. Now scroll down and I'll tell you, it's the 4 scenarios I want you to look at. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going. Next, right there. All right, now we're going to do this page and the previous. So right now we're at, I'm going to stick on the 4 scenarios first. So can you scoot that up so we can see? There we go. Okay. So originally, when we had the total list of projects that we showed you that everybody said, hey, this is, you know, if you can do it, this is what we want you to look at. It was the 170 and some change. And so Hilltop just did a calculation on 24 million plus all in on all those projects. We are now talking about scenario 2, which is down to the 125 million for a total 149. And so it tells you that over their assumptions period, that's that's 5 cents. But I want you to go now up to the next page and yeah, right there. Okay. So I want to see the interest rates and tax table values. So if you'll look here, they're talking about the interest rates being what they are on the 21st plus, you know, over a period of time, 1.75% increase in the interest rate. That's conservative because right now they're looking at probably lowering the interest rates in the near term. And so this is assuming that we do a fourth of the 25% of the issuance every other year because they have to run some assumptions, right? And then they roll in that additional interest rate for security, right? They're also telling you that after 2029, your growth rate, they're holding your growth rate to be 1.6%. So between the fact that they have to tell us, they have to add interest rate assumptions because that's what these guys have to do, worst case scenario, and the fact that they have to hold your growth arbitrarily low, that's because they want to be the worst case scenario. So when we're talking about that 5 cents, that assumes worst case scenario on interest rates, worst case scenario on growth, and it assumes that we're issuing every 2 years blindly. And my history on the bond program is we don't need road money as quickly as you do. So let's go back to the interest, the next page down. Yeah. We don't have to use all this money at once or even a quarter of it at once. We probably do it in smaller tranches. And we think that we'll be able to start as many of these projects as possible early on and have little to no impact on your tax rate because we will hold to whatever y'all's financial assumptions need it to be to minimize any impact on the tax rate. Because if you'll notice, we're talking 2 or 3 or 4% to start on any of these projects. So the initial investment that the county has to make in these projects to get them rolling is a very small percentage of the total. And so we can feather these in as needed, and we can move as fast or slowly as we need in order to fit whatever your financial situation ends up being. So, for example, when we did the 2004 bond program in Rockwall County, the county said their calculations said that it would be 3 cents if all these worst case scenarios occurred over the life of the bond program. When we came back in 2008 to do another bond program, we were able to calculate that we got those 5 projects done, and we only hit the tax rate by a penny. And the reason it was even hit by a penny is because they chose to hit the penny because they were moving with speed, right? Because we could have drug it out another couple of years and it not had any impact. So I don't know if I'm rambling, but all I'm saying is we can feather your bond issuances. All the bond program does is give you the authority to issue the debt. You'll issue the debt to feather it in so that it has the least impact on the tax rate as possible.
And I think to break that down a little bit, like looking at the old Granbury Road scenario there, that's projected, or we're on here for $57 million. We don't go out day one and get $57 million. We don't need to do the entire road from 377 to 377 in Granbury. That whole thing's not coming at one time. So whenever you're talking about feathering that project in, it's, we do this portion of the road, and then, whenever the time is right, when
so let's assume it's, I think I remember it's like 170 something million. Yeah. And let's assume that, we're talking about 10% design, which we're not going to pay 10%. I just put that in there because we have to use a calculation. We're going to negotiate that down. But if that's like 17 million of the 57, that would be the first thing we would do. And then what we would also then do is, depending upon how we want to work with your purchasing and the auditor, is they're not going to spend $17 million in 1 year, right? It'll be a 2, 3, 4 year period, 3.5. So we then calculate a burn rate, and then we tell you how much you need annually for that contract. And then I was talking to Stephanie, I don't know if this is something y'all are going to want to do or not, but other counties that we're working on, what they do is the first time you go into the market is the most expensive because you got to get your rating agencies, you got to pay them to do your rating agency ratings. And then on top of that, you've got an issuance cost. Those rating agency ratings are good for 3 years. And so what other counties have been doing is go ahead and not issuing for a 2 year period, everything they need for the 2 years, but only issuing enough for that first year, because they can go back into the market every 6 months if they want, and it's a very nominal cost, and that way you don't hit your debt service all at once with 2 years for stuff that you're not going to spend until third quarter next year. And so we can feather that in so that it has very limited impact on your rate. So that's what I'm saying. All you're doing is getting basically the permission to spend the money, and then you're going to spend it fiduciarily in a manner that keeps everybody from having pitchforks and
road. That's going to be a joint because the city's going to start where the old Granbury Road intersects 377 across from the feed store and go north. And the first phase will go to 167 Temple Hall.
Right.
And, so, it's not all at one time. And it's both, part of that is both a joint and city county endeavor.
Right, and so that's what I'm saying. What I recommend on Old Granbury Road is to get it environmentally cleared for the entire corridor, because you have to take it it has to have a logical term, and I'm not going to get into the legals on it, but clear the whole thing, and then you only build it in increments that you need that make sense at the time, and based on what your partners are bringing to the table. So yeah, it's even the 57 million, it'll be spread out over multiple years. And none of these projects you need all the money up front, with the single exception of maybe the railroad crossing, because it's like $212,000 all in on it. So that's all I got. My recommendation is the 125 gets you all the primary projects that y'all originally said you wanted. And it puts you in the game with both the MPO and TXFUT on critical projects. And remember, if we continue to be successful on 377, at some point, 377 in Granbury is going to go further and further under the knife, and these alternate routes are going to be helpful if they're in progress.
Well, to add too, is I want to go back to your comment at the front end of minimal impact on INS. And my understanding is next year, in February of this next year, correct me if I'm wrong, but the county on its current trajectory will have no debt. And so am I being correct on that? And I'm glad Mr. Berry's in here because, you know, I want to call the attention to the Crescent bypass. You know, Steve was out there in May of 2019 when I was in office about 3 months, just breaking ground on that. And our part of that deal was 1.1 million a year. There was no interest. I don't think we're going to get a deal like that again. But it was 1.1 million per year for the county's part of that. And then the state picked up the rest, and I think the total tab was 85 to 90 million. So the leverage we're talking, you know, we're talking leverage here, and we're also not, and he's correct, if we do a bond issue for 125 million, that doesn't mean we're going to go out and get the 125, and we don't start paying interest until we actually grab some money. So it's basically a line of credit, so to speak, for lack of a better way to explain it. And the other thing, in answer to somebody who came up to the podium and spoke, that there will be two different propositions, correct?
Absolutely. By law, you can't mix metaphors. So you'll have prop A or B, or one is the jail or the roads, and the other proposition will be for the jail or the road. So you'll be able to vote yes on one and yes on the other, or yes on one, no on the other, or no on both. But there'll be separate bond program propositions on your ballot.
So the 5 cents so we go with our average home in Hood County being $300,000. So worst case scenario, the 5 cents would be $150 a year for the homeowner.
That's correct. And that's at the end of issuing all 125 million over an 8-year time frame. And that assumes all those negative things occur on the previous page. And so I love Hilltop. They almost everywhere I go, that's where they are. They're very good at what they do, but they have to be very conservative because that's what they get paid to be. And that is a worst case scenario.
Right, because we wouldn't issue 100.
You just stop issuing. It's like Denton County did a bond program in 2008, and so did Rockwall County, and we all know what happened in 2010, right? So they just stopped issuing, and we waited out the trauma, and then once the growth started back up, then they started issuing again. So there's no requirement to issue those, but they have to make a calculation on some assumption. So we always tell them, do it every other year in equal amounts. And I can show you, we've never done every other year, and we've never done equal amounts in any other bond program. We only come to you and say, this is what we need for the next period of time we're looking at. And we've started doing burn rate, because even if you have a contract for $10 million on an engineering contract for a $170 million job, that's over a 4-year period. And so we can feather that out however y'all need it to be. It doesn't have to have an impact if you don't want it to.
Would you go back to that other slide, please? So if you look at that first one where it says 0.37, that's about what we're at now. Is that correct? About 0.035 is our current INS roughly? Oh, that's okay. All right, okay. So we're talking about the delta, right, between that and
right. You're assuming that the 2.5 stays, right? And you already said you're going to zero in February. That assumes that stays, and then that's the delta between if you went out and just spent, issued 125 million over, 8-year period, 6-year period. which it's very difficult to spend money for transportation. That's the hard part that people don't understand. There are so many rules and regulations that I think I've showed some of y'all. There are other counties that are sitting on millions of dollars in construction dollars that they can't go spend because they haven't gotten through all of the regulatory things that I'm saying we need to start doing right now, because I call it faith-based engineering. You're going to get it ready, because even if you gave you the money, you couldn't spend it until you do these things. So that's like I say, everything that Hilltop's telling you is worst case scenario, and it assumes that you'd blindly issue debt even though you're having a difficult time with your growth rate or your interest rates. You just wouldn't do it.
Anybody else?
I was going to ask Christine to go back to the website for a second. The bond program. I was going to show everybody where the presentations are under documents for master thoroughfare plan. Yeah, so here's where all the work that we've been doing over the last year with TNP, our consultants. So the 314-2025 workshop summary, and the one right under that, the master thoroughfare plan. That's when we adopted the map and the plan, right, Ryan? Okay. So if you click on that one, the 3.5, that should have details of all the, I think this is what you were asking about.
Yes, so I'm getting questions on the email about trying to take credit for all the work Ryan did, and so I'm just saying Ryan probably needs to be the one answering those questions, because he did the work.
Okay, so if you just scroll down to a few of the maps, and we'll.
So a lot of people think a master thoroughfare plan is a map, right? That pretty map that you always see. Mm-hmm. But the words mean way more important than the map, because the words drive what you do with those lines. And so this stuff is important. The actual document itself that goes into the assumptions that's made, and then once the roads are selected, what that cross-section needs to be, what the type of arterial or minor collector it's going to be. So it drives all your development expenditures based on the science behind the thoroughfare plan that y'all adopted. There's a lot that goes into it.
So for anyone who's watching online or watching this afterwards, or people in the audience, this is all of those documents between the commissioners and the judge and our consultant TNP, our stakeholders throughout the county. This was a very collaborative effort to get this done, and I think that we all worked very well together and with our consultants to get this to where we are, and I just want to thank everybody for that.
One thing just to add, the add-ons, what's in the master thoroughfare plan is not locked in concrete. There can be some movement in some of those, roads, but, this is how we move people and how people are able to get around in the county with what we put together. But, it is not, locked in, to exactly where those marks are.
We're going to avoid, because the environmental clearance, you have to avoid, minimize, mitigate, or enhance. And so the first thing you try to do on alignment is to avoid any of the more critical issues. And so we go, so when the county does it, we're granular enough that we'll go out if we think we call them meetings with affected property owners, or MAPOs, and we'll say, hey, this is where it looks like it's a good place. And they go, well, I got a water well here, or my grandfather's house was here, or a graveyard is there, or it's a historical ranch. Those are all things we got to avoid, right? So there are connections where the county and your consultant thinks the connections need to be made, but where they are specifically on the ground is what this bond program will pay to determine the environmental and the schematic.
If someone looks at this map and says, hey, that's my
going through my
property
front
or
yard.
my
Yeah.
grandfather's property or whatever, you would encourage them to ask, to go through the master thoroughfare plan feedback and just ask you about it, or?
Absolutely. Well, we really, really, really want to hear from folks, because what happens a lot of times is if we're successful, we get a bond program put together, it passes, we start implementing it, and then people are surprised, right? That we're coming out looking at a bypass around, doing the connections or doing the reliever route. The thing is, if your government has enough power to inform you on everything that they're doing and make you pay attention, they're powerful enough to take everything away from you. So I don't know of a better way to do it than just keep telling everybody, put this up on Facebook, call your friends. We'll go and meet with anybody on anything, anytime. And we're going to try to address as many of these questions as we get to the best of our ability. And it'll be good when Ryan answers them, because he actually did the work. So we're trying to get the message out to everybody.
Somebody out there that this might be coming through a new area. I mean, they're not going to get up one morning cooking breakfast and look out the window and say, "Hey, John, come here. Here comes the dozers." That's not going to happen, right?
No, because the type of funding we're using, the public has to be, and y'all would do it anyway, it has to be fully involved in the process. So there will be, once we have an idea, 2 or 3 alignment ideas in that area, everybody that's within 500 feet of that proposed alignment will get notified in writing by mail, and then we'll follow up and say, "Hey, we are looking at a road in this area. We're going to have a public meeting on this date. Come here, let's get your comments. Tell us what your thoughts, hopes, desires, and dreams are." And we'll have multiple of those. And everything we learn from those meetings will modify, minimize, avoid, or enhance to try to get the impact as minimal as possible. It's a long process. That's why we have to feather it out, because the environmental clearance on some of these projects, and y'all have a lot of environmentally sensitive areas. Best case scenario is 18 months to get through it. But it's more like 24 to 30 months to get through when you have issues like this. And you want us, whoever's doing the document, you want them to look at every jot and tittle and to minimize as best you can any impacts.
After the election in November.
Yeah, if it passes, then we'll come back and say, okay, here are the 4 or 5 projects I think we need to start on, because they either have the longest lead time or they got the highest priority for traffic movement. And we won't start on all 9 projects at once, unless we can fit it in the financials. We'll pick those projects that we think are in one of those 2 categories, and then that'll be the first one out. And then the very next thing we're going to do is harass your purchasing department, and we're going to put out a RFQ for consulting services to pick up firms to actually do the work. And that'll all be competitively bid, and not competitively bid, most qualified selection. So there's a lot of steps.
Okay, everybody, anything else? Okay, Ms. Brown, after listening to all that, do you have anything you want to ask?
So this one's probably about the budget, like how much of each one of these projects is going to be affected by the budget. I mean, so I guess that's a comment for the budget part of this meeting.
I mean, we just went through that. It's going to have very little on the immediate budget, 0 effect.
What was the nickel?
That was once.
That's not going to be part of the budget?
So that's if we issue the debt in 26 and 28, and that's a total for all 125 million over that 6-year period. So the initial issuance will probably be some money for the jail, some part of that 24 million, but it'll be in the next budget issue. Sorry, I didn't.
Next question.
Okay, so so this is for those two projects?
Yes,
That's not going to, how it's going to be listed in the, on the ballot?
There'll be two
They'll
different,
be separate, right? So we don't know.
Right.
But this is going to be the total amount, and part of it's going to be for roads, and part of it's going to be for the jail?
if both bond measures passed, yes, but let's just say one of them passed and the other one didn't, then this number on the very bottom would be a lot lower because you're only going to issue part of it.
I know, but we don't know how much each project is at this point.
Well, the estimates are 24 million for the jail, and depending on which scenario, which right now we're talking about scenario 2, is 125 million for the roads.
So this is not the current thing on the website?
No, we just got that today.
Okay, so, okay. So how much, as far as the roads go, how much of property could be taken by eminent domain?
So in some cases where we're like doing the intersection improvements on 377, we think there'll be minimal right-of-way taking, but on new locations, if we get the project environmentally cleared, then the next step would be to go into right-of-way acquisition. And so eminent domain, it would be a negotiation. We would try to get a settlement agreement between the two property owners, us and y'all, and
Eminent, can I throw something in?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, eminent domain is a last resort. You start out negotiating with the property owners and try to cut a deal with them. That's where you start. You don't just walk in there and knock on their door and say, we're getting ready to come through here, get your stuff packed. That's not the way it happens. It's an involved process where it's going to begin looking at the market values of the property and negotiating with the property owners, hoping to come to an agreement where both parties can live with it.
Okay, let me rephrase that then. How much property are we talking about taking or buying or getting to do this road project? How many acres or how many homeowners? How many, do we have any idea how many people are going to get that?
Not yet, because we haven't started any of the studies. The studies make that determination. So in some cases, we've got projects that we're doing that are 22 miles long, and there's 2 displacements because we, right now, avoid, right? So the intent is to minimize the impact, but we don't know what the impacts are yet because that's what the studies determine.
Okay, well, so, and are we really building a bridge to Pecan? On the Glenrose side of the river instead of the Fort Worth side of the river?
Oh,
That's a pretty good way to get across the Brazos, is you got to build a bridge.
Either on the Glenrose side, which you're trying to avoid, or the Fort Worth side where you want to go?
it's more on the Johnson County side.
Towards Glenrose?
No, towards Fort Worth.
Huh?
It's closer. Well, it is, I think it will, I don't know if it'll connect, that's a question to.
The alignment on the thoroughfare plan just shows a connection south. Okay, where it actually is, the study will determine, because right now, we don't know what the best location to cross the river is, but it'll be generally in that area. And so you're asking detailed questions right now, and that's what these studies do, is tie the firms to figure those things out.
Citizens want detailed questions and asked and answered, so.
We also don't want to lie to you.
Well, no.
Right.
Yeah, and there'll be, yeah. So the intent is to get people to Chisholm Trail. So that's the intent.
Okay.
Yeah, and through that.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, through the study that they did of the changes of the traffic flow and everything else, that is a significant relief. It gets a lot of vehicles off of 377 even coming down that route to get them over Chisholm Trail, 67, whatever, to route them around that side of the county. It's a huge relief. There's a lot of vehicles that move down that road to get out that direction. So they sat down and the engineers ran the numbers on that, what the traffic patterns look like after these things are done. And we focused on that. That is, how are we moving people the most effectively?
But this bridge to Pecan is only going to be available to Pecan residents, right?
Whatever, I mean, and then that road, whatever development happens over there.
I mean, I understood he said something about specific bonds or specific programs where you can get because of the
Safety
nuclear power
issues.
plant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It just,
There'll be 12,000 people in Pecan. If the current, there's a current, Ms. Highsmith may know more about this than I do, but there's a current initiative to go up to 4,700 homes instead of 4,500. So that'll add more people. So 12,000 people. Just think about Kerrville and flooding, wildfires, and the nuclear power plant. So there's a significant safety issue to try to get 12,000 people out.
okay, so the verbiage for this all will be available before the 18th? Is that what I got?
Stay tuned. Stay around.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
And Tina, to your question there was a specific, and that's what we were talking about. There was a specific situation over in Rockwall County where it was a gated subdivision with railroad tracks on the outside. And the way that they expanded that exit, and the MPO was on board with it because of the number of people and the safety factor that's involved in that they went ahead and partnered with that. The funding source came a little bit different, and I'm not real sure. John would be way better on explaining that. But it's the safety concern and moving the number of people out. But yeah, like I said, there's some different funding situations that come up with that, but there is precedence for this and the MPO involvement in moving those people.
Was the Stroud Creek thing, was it on the, it's down here? So,
These are all.
so the top,
All of these are in the bond program for the recommendation. These are on the state's highway system, right? So we're going to partner with the state and MPO on these. These are not on the state highway system, so we're going to partner with MPO only. And there's a, there is a, at the back, there's a glossary of all the crazy things I'm saying. Right. No, but listen, the website, when we done, I give my cell phone, we're looking for people to ask questions because we want to answer them before the election.
Are we going to do something like the state did with the 377 at nighttime?
Absolutely.
For everybody to come see?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've even got that cleared with the city about using the convention center or whatever, and we spoke with John about that. Yeah.
Yesterday, I saw somebody post that this is the first they heard about it.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to get it out.
All I can say to that is that's their problem. We've been doing this for 2 years now. At least 2 years. Yeah.
Well,
So.
And, yeah, there's, not everyone's on social media, not everyone gets the paper, and that's really all we have. Maybe we need to take some ads out on some radio stations, but that's why we hired these guys. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
one other, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We did have, Ms. Brown, we did have one of our workshops earlier on at night, hoping that we would get you. But we had fewer people there than we have here today, so,
Three
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Three.
So I would like to finish this particular agenda item out with this. The information is online. It's available. All you got to do is go out there. Which precinct are you in, Ms. Brown?
2.
So you can also talk to your commissioner and all these questions that you've got. So feel free to do that. And people in my well, you can call any of us. But the information is here, and I think everybody sitting up here is more than happy to visit with, to the best of their knowledge. Some of the questions you're asking right now, we don't have an idea yet. We don't know how it's going to work out. This is the planning stage, but we're getting ready to go to the next stage, and that's to start to put a bond issue out to see if y'all want us to work on these roads. You know, it's going to be up to the voters pretty quick here. Anything else?
Yeah, we have some folks on the phone from McCall. Isn't that about this agenda item? Okay, well, we have the proposed language for the ballot. Do you want to see that?
Sure.
Okay, Christine.
I don't think we can vote on that today.
No, we're just going to look at it.
Yeah, sure. Take it away.
Oh, well, I don't know if we just want to allow some time for everybody to read it. Can you read it from back there? Okay, so this, goes over Measure 1, which is for the jail for $24 million. So I'll just leave it up here for a bit.
Measure A.
Ms. Freeman, can you see it from back there? Okay.
And this will all be part of your packet when you put it on the agenda to actually do the vote. This will all be in your agenda packet, and there'll be and your bond counsel is online. There'll be a lot of backup material associated with this that you have to have as backup as far as part of the agenda placement, but this is what is going to be on the ballot, and then they'll give you specific wording on your actual agenda placement.
So, Commissioner, would you read Measure A? Just go ahead and read it.
Okay.
Please.
Should the Commissioners Court of Hood County, Texas be authorized to issue and sell bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $24 million for the public purpose of constructing, rehabilitating, renovating, improving, upgrading, updating, expanding, enlarging, and equipping the county's law enforcement center and jail with the bonds to mature, bear interest, and be issued and sold as permitted by law, and should the Commissioners Court be authorized to levy and pledge and cause to be assessed and collected annual ad valorem taxes on all taxable property in the county sufficient within the limits provided by law to pay the annual interest and provide a sinking fund to pay the bonds at maturity.
Commissioner Andrews, how about you read Measure B?
Should the Commissioners Court of Hood County, Texas be authorized to sell or issue and sell general obligation bonds of the county in the principal amount of $125 million, which amount of bonds doth not exceed 1/4 of the assessed valuation of the real property in the county, for the purpose of the construction, acquisition by purchase, maintenance, and operation of macadamized, gravelled, or paved roads, or in aid thereof within the county, with the bonds to mature, bear interest, and be issued and sold as permitted by law. And should the Commissioners Court be authorized to levy and pledge and cause to be assessed and collected annual ad valorem taxes on all taxable property in the county sufficient within the limits provided by law to pay the annual interest and provide a sinking fund to pay the bonds at maturity.
And note that those are both posed as questions. Okay? Capiche? Got that? Okay. So, and the method of voting will be by ballot. Now, if Commissioner Samuelson would read, we've got Hood County Proposition A, that part has to go with it, correct?
Right. And it says, this is a tax increase, the issuance of bonds in an amount not to exceed $24 million for renovation and expansion of the county's law enforcement center and jail, and the levy of taxes sufficient to pay the principal of and the interest on the bonds.
And Commissioner Andrews, it's your turn.
This is a tax increase, the issuance of bonds in the amount of $125 million for road projects and the levy of taxes sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on the bonds.
Now, I will note that the language that says this is a tax increase is mandatory language. Whether you'll actually see that in the tax rate as we go forward in the future or not, we can't predict that. The interest rates could be lower. You may not ever see much of a difference, and you might, depending on what the interest rates do as we let parts of the bond, if this is passed, either one of these. And then the rest of this is just polling details and stuff that would go to the elections administrator and her part of this deal. Anybody have any other comments?
Well, I was going to ask our bond counsel if they wanted to go over the things that we are, the timeline of what we can and can't say and when, the training, I guess, for lack of better words.
Sure. Good afternoon. This is Rudy Seguda with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton. We have the privilege of being bond counsel to Hood County. I also have with me Rose Kaniski, who is head of our elections department, handles upwards of 50 bond elections per cycle. And so I'm not sure how much detail you would like me to go into the political advertising issues at this time. I did want to make a few quick notes about the language that was just read, if I may. The first parts that were read were the measures. Those are the full-length measures. That is the contract with the voters that is binding on the voters. The second parts, the ballot language, which are much shorter, I just did want to point out that there's not a lot of leeway on how those are written. You have some, but there's chapter 1251 of the government code spells out what has to be on the actual ballot. It has to have a plain language description of the single specific purpose for which the bonds are voted. So, for instance, in Proposition A, the description would be renovation and expansion of the county's law enforcement center and jail. And for Proposition B, it would just be road projects. So it has to have that. The second thing is the total principal amount of the debt obligations to be authorized. That's just $1. And the third thing, it has to have the statement that tax is sufficient to pay the principal of an interest on the debt obligations will be imposed. And we have that in there. And then, of course, the newest requirement that was just passed through the legislatures, this is a tax increase. And we just received an opinion, I think on Monday, from Ken Paxton's office that said that has to be on every single tax election. Doesn't matter if you're voting to lower the tax rate. I don't know who would call an election to lower the tax rate, but even if you were to call an election to lower the tax rate, you have to put the statement in all capitals. This is a tax increase. So, so just to clarify that, those what was read first, the lengthier versions, voters aren't going to see that at the ballot box at the polling places. They're just going to see the shorter version of what's on the ballot, and that is prescribed by statute, and the Attorney General enforces that and makes sure that the ballots do comply with 1251 of the government code. In terms of political advertising, I think, with this, we discussed this with Commissioners Court maybe last year or earlier this year with prior elections. But basically, state law says that you cannot use property taxes to try to convince voters to approve a property tax increase. And so, what they call that is public funds. And public funds, the word public funds is very, very broadly construed to mean any county resource, the phone system, email system, website, a single paperclip, the copy machine, a list of emails that was gathered for other purposes for the by the tax assessor or whatever. Most recently, the biggest thing has been Facebook. Facebook, using a county's official Facebook account, could be considered the use of public funds, even though it's free and you don't pay for it. Somebody went on there and just created it. But you cannot use any public funds or resources of the county to advocate for or against a measure or a candidate. And that takes effect, that rule only takes effect once a measure exists. So right now, there's no measure because no bond has been called. But assuming the Commissioner's Court would adopt an order calling the election on August 12th, then that statute would take effect. It is Chapter 253 of the Election Code, 255. It is.
Say that again.
I think it's 255-003. Is that right, Rose?
Yes.
Yes, 255-003 of the Election Code. And so it creates an offense. It is a Class A misdemeanor. So that's worse than a DWI. It's like punching somebody in the face. If you authorize the use of public funds or county resources for political advertising to basically try to advocate for or against a measure. The problem is that what constitutes advocating for or against is a very, very thin, blurry line that is very easy to stumble across. And so it's not just, saying go vote. I hear crickets. It's not just saying go vote yes or go vote no. It's the way that information is presented. So these rules, this statute is enforced by the Texas Ethics Commission, same entity that approves all the various candidate filings and regulates those filings. And so it's if you were to present information, it says you can only present factual information, right? So what are the facts? The facts are like, how much is this going to cost? What are you going to build? Always include the tax rate impact, right? Something sort of negative, what it's going to cost, the consequences of voting yes, is your taxes are going to go up. You can include sort of renderings or plans, but you can't just put all the good facts, all the sorts of facts that would encourage someone to vote yes, and none of the bad facts that would might persuade someone to vote against. It has to be balanced. Any communication you put out has to be balanced, whether it be on your website, in print. It applies to any sort of communication. It can be, again, print, digital, even oral statements can be acted upon. But the commission relies on this series of cases, what they call tone and emphasis. So, one of the earliest examples was there was a city councilman, I believe in Houston, that was, he had a newsletter that would go out to all of his constituents. And when he was up for re-election, he sent out a newsletter that it didn't say go vote for me. It didn't mention anything about an election, but it had his picture plastered all over it. It had his name in bold and larger print and text around it. And it went on and on about all the positive things he had done in office. And the Ethics Commission concluded that although it did not say anything about him being up for re-election, the general tone and emphasis of the document was asking people to support him for re-election. Another example was, I think the VIA Metropolitan Authority in San Antonio, they had a proposition to authorize a light rail system. And as they were preparing to put that on the ballot, they did a citywide coloring contest. And they put these pages at all the bus stops, and it was a picture of a light rail train. And they had a contest for the kids to color it, or people to color it, submitted. Didn't say anything about an election, didn't say anything about sales taxes increase. It's just coloring contest. Well, the Ethics Commission, it became an issue. They said, well, this looks like advocacy, right? Without doing it, you're trying to get people to support this measure. That's kind of the short of it. The short of it is it applies to elected officials. It applies to county staff. You cannot use county time and county employees. I'll give you one more example. Nearby, the cities of Lone Star and Dangerfield, they're kind of like sister cities. And they had one, in fact, they share a school district called Lone Star Dangerfield, or Dangerfield Lone Star ISD. But they had one mayor was up for re-election, the other wasn't. The one that wasn't up for re-election, he invited the mayor that was up for re-election to come over to City Hall, and he took a picture of him shaking hands and said, I endorse this guy for re-election. He posted it on his personal Facebook. However, it was taken inside of the City Hall, not the city where the mayor was running for re-election, but from the mayor that was supporting him. And so the Ethics Commission said, well, there you used public funds. And he said, no, I didn't. He said, it's a public facility. Anybody could go in there. And he said, well, anybody can go in. It was in the city council chambers. Anybody can go in the council chambers during a meeting. What time of day was it? So it was in the middle of the afternoon. He said, well, how'd you get in there? Well, I called the janitor. I had him come and unlock it for me. And then I gave him my phone and had him take the picture. So Ethics Commission said, all right, so they used public, it was not a facility that was open to the public at that time. He was using his power. They were using public funds. There's special power granted to the mayor to access City Hall. Then they used city staff to take the picture, and therefore he violated the statute. One important thing is like violating these rules that has no bearing on the outcome of the election. Whether the election passes or fails has nothing to do with this. This will likely, if someone were to file a complaint against an official for authorizing the use of public funds for political advertising, that would get hammered out 1 or 2 years after the election was done for. And it would be an individual liability of that official or officials. But that is sort of the short version. Rose, anything I missed?
No, I like to say it just boils down to a simple rule, not to use public resources to advocate, but we still have an affirmative duty to provide information. And that's what Rudy and I are here for, is to help review those communications and make sure that they are neutral.
So I got a question. So if this commissioner or a commissioner is out in the private sector walking around and somebody came and said, and I asked us or asked me about this bond issue, I should be able to say, well, I can't take a position for the court, but I'm in favor of it, or I'm not in favor of it. Is that fine?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Question mark.
So I'll flesh that out a little more. Yes, in your personal time, if you're not driving a county vehicle, you're not en route to, a TAC conference where you're getting reimbursed for mileage, whatever. If it's just your time, you're at your Rotary Club meeting or Kiwanis Club or Toastmasters or your church, you can do that. You're speaking, me on myself, Commissioner Eagle, and not on behalf of Hood County. That's fine. There's little things that have kind of gotten people off guard. What if you're wearing a polo with the county seal on it? If that that polo or hoodie was provided by the county, paid for by taxpayers, then I would not, I wouldn't do that while you're kind of representing the county. But you can do it on your own time, on your own dime. If there's a PAC that wants to put together signs that say vote yes, you can put one in your personal property. There was a college president of a junior college district where he allowed those signs to be stored at his office at the college, and he was fined by the ethics commission just for storing the signs. He didn't have them on college campus. Well, he didn't post them on college campus. They were locked up in his office. But just allowing the use of his office for storage of the materials, they said was a violation.
Second question, and that'll take care of me. Are school districts exempt from all this?
No, sir.
Anybody else? Any other comments, council? Apparently not. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this commissioner would like a 5-minute break. We got one more agenda item. So we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes. Is that all right? back on the record at 2:58, and we've got the second item on the agenda today is discuss and take appropriate action, if any, regarding voter-approved tax rate, setting budget, setting tax rate, and calling for a voter-approved tax rate election ballot measure for the November 4th, 2025 election. And this commissioner put this on the agenda because we're up against some real serious timelines as far as the bond election is concerned, which is not related to the tax rate or the budget. So we have a constraint in Hood County in that we have a newspaper that's only published on a Saturday, and it has to be any item that gets put in the paper has to be to them by noon on Monday. So we've already lost the date for the one that's coming Saturday, and if we wait till the next meeting on next Tuesday, we won't be able to hit the one for the following Saturday, and so it's pushing us up against a window. So I had a long conversation this morning with Jeff Law, the chief appraiser, and by the way, we got one speaker. Before I finish, Ms. Brown, you want to come up and speak? Actually, our rules of decorum say when you're called, you can come up and speak. If you got something you want to add to it, please come up. If you're waiving it, then we're going to move forward. Are you waiving? Okay, thank you. So we have, anyway, with my conversation with Mr. Law this morning, we need to vote up and down on a proposed tax rate, and we also need to set the date for a public hearing to set the tax rate. Now, we do this every year, and the proposed tax rate is not necessarily what we end up. In fact, it's never ended up where we've never ended up there the years I've been on the Commissioner's Court. But today we do need to, today I'm proposing that we take a vote on that so that we can, so that the so that the chief appraiser can meet the notice deadlines for Monday to get it in the newspaper for the following Saturday. And so this is not set in stone, but this is part of the process that we have to do for notice in order to have a final hearing on setting the budget and the tax rate. So anybody have any questions?
Why does it say battery on your agenda item?
Sorry?
Calling for a battery. Why does it have that on your agenda item?
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked that question, and here's my answer. Because at the time that I put this on the agenda, I didn't know. Actually, when we had the meeting a week and a half ago on Friday, we were going under the assumption that to do what we needed to do, we were going to have a voter-approved tax rate election. Well, one thing that I knew a little bit about, but I didn't do the calculations, is a concept called an unused increment. We have a cap that we can only raise the tax rate a certain level, and that's 3.5%. However, every year that we go under and stay with close to the no new revenue rate or under, we are accumulating credit. So based on that, right now our voter approved tax rate, would you put that back up, please? Our voter approved tax rate is 0.341703. What that means is that if we don't go over that amount, we do not have to have an election. And so for purposes of a proposed tax rate, then the proposal would be today is to propose this number, but I can tell you right now, based on discussions with the auditor, that we're going to be quite a bit under that number as far as what we're going to end up with. Does that make sense?
Can you scroll down, please?
let me, while y'all are reading this, if we have any rate that's above the no new revenue rate, we have to do this notice like we're doing today. And so obviously we would be over the no new revenue rate for these raises that we've discussed for the county and other issues that have come up. So anything above the no new revenue rate we have to put a proposed tax rate in there and get the proper notice out there. So that is why, thankfully, I mean, I put this on the agenda this way just in case we needed to do this. But thankfully, we're not even going to have an election on it.
What is this bold line there? It says held on at. What does that mean?
This is just a example of what the notice will look like once you guys vote. The information will be given to Jeff Law. He'll put it in the system, and then he will notice based on what you guys vote today, and it will look similar to this, but it will include the date and time of the public hearing.
And here's the proposal on that, Commissioner. Proposal would be to put the proposed tax rate at the voter approved rate, and then to have the hearing on setting the tax rate on the first Commissioners Court in September, which is September the 9th. And I didn't make a motion yet, but that's what it would look like.
Doesn't it normally show what the tax increase would be if there it is, okay.
I didn't hear you. Did you ask a question?
Yes, doesn't it normally say on an average $300,000 home, the tax increase would be X?
Yeah. And go to the top of the next page, please. Right there. Commissioner Andrews, any questions?
Yeah.
Comments, questions, whatever.
We've got kind of sort of two budgets floating out there. Where are we on the higher of the two? What rate? Yes. 3165. So should we go to that on this proposed? That's kind of where I think we should be is at that fills that provides for the budget that is out there that we are still working on, still whittling down. So, yeah. So I think that's where we need to be on that is at that rate, and then anticipate working on that some more and bringing it down.
So give me a motion, please.
Motion that we have a proposed property tax rate of 0.3165.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll make two votes out of this. So we've got a proposed tax rate for purposes of getting notice in the newspaper that's only published once a week of 0.3165, made by Commissioner Wilson, seconded by Commissioner Andrews. Any further comment?
Could I read the rest of the document, please? I mean, this is the first yes, we see this document every year, but this is the first we've seen it with these numbers on it. No, right there is fine. Okay. So I thought this was going to be on the agenda on Tuesday, but because of the deadline for the newspaper, we have to do it today.
There's a process, and so this is part of the process. And what I'll do is put all the things that need to happen on pretty much every agenda until they happen, so that there's opportunity. But in order to meet the aggressive timelines of the whole budget process, we have to start with publishing a proposed. You have to vote on the proposed, so it's pretty tight.
So
Yeah,
wasn't there already something that'll be in the paper this weekend?
So I was not saying the right thing when I talked to you guys regarding what the process was. After talking to Jeff Law, he said that you guys have to vote on what you want the proposed rate to be, and then set a public notice, and then that's when he then publishes in the papers. There's nothing that is going to be published in this Saturday's paper regarding this, because this has happened first.
Okay, and there's nothing published about elected official salaries? Has that been in the paper already?
The elected officials, I published based on what Judge Massengill's budget said, and then I published that again. So that will be in this Saturday's paper based on what I've been told by individuals.
Okay. And that was based on Judge Massengill's budget?
So Massengill's was published, and then that secondary one was published based on that other comment that was made at the meeting. Was the Friday ago after 10%.
Okay.
So this requires an up and down vote, so Commissioner Andrews?
Aye.
Commissioner Samuelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Eagle? Aye. The judge is absent today. Please note that for the record. Okay, second vote is, and I'm going to make this motion, that we set the time to set the tax rate, and I guess the budget will go along with that. Set the tax rate. Yeah, okay, thank you for helping me. So we're going to set the public hearing for the proposed tax rate to vote on said tax rate for the First Commissioners Court in September, which is September the 9th, 2025, to begin at 9 a.m. Do I get a second?
Second.
Any other comments? So we have a motion to set the public hearing on setting a tax rate proposed, well, it'll be the real tax rate on the 9th. We just did the proposed. Let me start over again. So we have a public hearing to set the tax rate. Okay. See what the legislature does to us? Let me start over again. So, because we got to use the magic language, and I get that. So the motion is to set the public hearing to discuss the proposed tax rate and potentially set the tax rate on September the 9th, 2025 in the regular Commissioners Court meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wilson. Any other discussion? Okay. Well, anyway, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Everybody said aye. So, and the judge is not here. So it's 4-0. So you good? Okay, it is 3:13, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.